But that's not the conversation today. No, the conversation is who's going to sneak in, who's left out, who's going to be the team over these last couple weeks that's going to make a run for it in the football judgment test for people that get themselves and earn themselves an opportunity to be in the dance. And once they get in the dance, are they going to be able to go? Outside looking in, couple teams obviously not thrilled. Couple teams obviously not thrilled. Inside looking out, there's some teams that are certainly
Thank God.
Hey, can't be dancing. Can't be dancing much or your ass is going to get kicked out. Then there's obviously the conversation of what do these people care about more in the College Football Playoff Committee? Is it your record? Okay, do they care about the record?
Sure.
Do they care about football judgment? Do they care about strength of schedule? Then you look at Texas, Penn State, and IU, ranked 3, 4, and 5. And then you look at their key wins for these teams.
Yeah.
And you can see how a team like Georgia, who's ranked pretty low, just had another massive win over Tennessee. They go Texas's key wins. Oh, Texas lost to Georgia, by the way. Texas's key wins. Vanderbilt, that was good at one point.
Big win.
Arkansas was good at one point.
Sure.
Okay, and that was very close this past weekend.
Yep.
I mean, that was a very close game until the fourth. That's a big rivalry game. That is a good win. Any win is a good win, especially in college ball in this modern world that we're in. Any win in the SEC is a good win is what we've been told. Penn State, who are their big-time wins? Okay, they're ranked fourth currently. Illinois and Wisconsin.
Okay.
They're good football
Good football team.
At Wisconsin.
Those are good football.
Jump.
Get up, get down.
Yeah, they're doing the whole thing. And then Indiana obviously has wins over Michigan, the reigning national champion.
Come on.
And then Washington, the reigning national finalist last year. And they're getting no respect, 106th strength of schedule. So you got a lot of people in the SEC going, okay, so what matters, what doesn't matter? What we know, college football matters.
Amen.
That's right.
And that's why people care so much. We'll be talking about that all damn day, I would assume. But if we're on the sideline, what we have learned is this is about to be a game.
Yeah.
This is about to be a game. But we're going to be on the sideline of a home field advantage college football, playoff game that matters. Win and move on. Lose, go to the offseason. You look at the bracket, how it's currently projected, and we have to talk about this. This is just a projection of a bracket. Now, the College Football Playoff Committee just does rankings. Okay, they just do rankings. So the people at ESPN College Football, the people that run the Tuesday night show, the people that are very much associated with College Game Day as well, I've talked to them about this, they are being forced to be kind of, so what are we supposed to do here?
Yep.
Well, will you give us a conference champion CFP committee? We don't do that. It's like, this is a new deal.
Kind of have to.
If you fucking did, it would be a lot easier for all parties. That's up for you guys to do. It's like, no, it isn't. This is yours, College Football Playoff Committee. This is your ranking. This is your thing. This is not an ESPN thing. Remember, last year, whenever Herb Street gives his take, all of a sudden everybody thinks Herb Street's the one picking who the Final Four teams is. I thought we were going to try to stay away from that. We thought it was going to be College Football Playoff Committee. They say, we're just doing the rankings. It's like, that's quite a cop-out. I would like to let the College Football Playoff Committee know that I feel that way. That is not a voice from anybody else. That is a voice from me. I think that is you should have to project who you think are going to be the conference champions because that's a very big piece of this entire 12-team playoff. So now what the ESPN folks are forced to do on Tuesday nights is they are just taking the highest ranked person or team from each conference and putting them as the conference champion. Now, I don't know if that's how the College Football Playoff Committee is looking at it. We don't know if that's how they're expecting it to work. But the way this kind of lays out, these are the highest projected ranked conference champions that get the first round bye. Then I was watching Get Up this morning. And Get Up this morning said, Ohio State has a 64% chance of earning a first-round bye in the CFP if they beat Indiana.
Okay.
So if they beat Indiana, they have a 64% chance to beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship because the only way you get a first-round bye is if you win your conference championship. So if they can beat Indiana, we think about 64% chance of beating Oregon. But the way they laid it out is as if they beat Indiana, their record is what it is, then you earn a first-round bye. The only way you earn a first-round bye is if you win a championship. And then the 4 highest-ranked champions then are the ones that get the first-round bye. The 5th highest-ranked champion, Power 5 champion, is going to be, or Power 4 champion in this particular case, is in the first round. So I think there is a little bit of confusion by people because it's the first time. But also, I think the College Football Playoff Committee is copping out of a very, very big piece of the new college football playoff bracket. And this is not somebody telling me to say this. Obviously, nobody wants to just say, hey, you guys who are getting paid billions of dollars for this entire thing aren't doing your job. Like, nobody's telling me to say that. I'm just saying you're making everybody's life that's in college football at ESPN much worse, because all anybody says on the internet whenever they see some of these things, oh, look who ESPN wants to be in there. That's their projection. It's like, no, this is strictly off of what the College Football Playoff Committee has ranked these particular teams. And the only thing we could possibly do is just take the highest ranked person from each conference and assume that they think they're going to be the champion and give them a first round bye, which is why this bracket could be completely different. Oregon could lose in the Big Ten championship here in Indianapolis. Not saying they will, but they could lose. Then they're getting bumped back. They have a home game. Now who's getting bumped out of the home? So this is literally just projection. This could be significantly different, let alone the Big 12. Everybody's saying BYU is going to win. That could be many other teams. And if Colorado gets on a run and they get hot, are they going to get ranked higher because of the good players that they have, the strength of schedule that they have, the hotness that they are in? Then are they getting a first round bye? Boise State's bouncing back? What if it's not Boise State? What if Army somehow goes on a run here and gets – it's like this bracket right here, I don't want to say is it's fun.
It's very fun.
This is very, very, very fun. But the accuracy of it could be complete crop.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you see people go, look at what ESPN's. It's not. This is the College Football Playoff Committee. Two very different people, two very different entities. A lot of proud people in that College Football Playoff Committee. And then there's obviously the question that was asked, well, what if you make it to the conference championship? They say they value championships. That's why you get a first round bye. Well, what if you have 2 losses in the SEC or the Big Ten? You make it to the championship somehow, which is possible in both parties. Then you get 3 losses and you're in a championship. There's no way you're going to get put in over somebody that has 1 loss from another conference or whatever. Here's what Ward Manuel, athletic director from Michigan, who is the lead of the College Football Playoff Committee, had to say about that last night to Reese Davis.
Well, we have a lot of value. You know, we're not going to speculate on what will happen, but we have a lot of value of the with the teams that make a championship game. That says a lot. Playing 12 games in the season, making your championship game is a really valuable data point. Number one. Number two, we're going to evaluate the games and how teams play and the performance on the field. That's what the commissioners have asked us to do. They didn't ask us to stop right before the championship game. They asked us to rank the teams through the championship game. And I think you could see over the years how the committee has valued those championship games and who stays in and where they're ranked. But this year, we're not going to speculate. We're going to let the season play out. But I think teams who make that championship game, the committee looks at them and puts them in high esteem.
Okay, so the committee has a very difficult job. We all understand that.
Yeah. Sure.
But they signed up for that job. They're one of the 13 people in there. They're the ones that get to make that decision, I think is how a lot of people say. They're not going to get 100% right, but these projections of the bracket, I think, are just so potentially wrong. But it gets everybody jacked up, and it gets the people going, D-Butch.
Yeah, it creates some conversation. Of course, that's what they want. But like you said, how they look now, these not only can be, this will be completely different once you – and you look at all of them, 3 out of the 4, all of them could lose. Honestly, outside, I think Boise, I think they're pretty – safe, but Oregon, you're going to play a tough. Miami, obviously, we don't know who's going to win the ACC. Big 12's wide open. Like, it's just going to be completely different. That's what's going to make it great.
Yeah, Texas going to be able to make to the SEC championship. Are they going to be able to win the SEC championship? They've only had one big SEC game thus far, and it was Georgia, and they lose at home.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like the amount of things that could change, I think, are endless. But I do believe that the excitement just continues to build.
Oh, no doubt.
Continues to build.
Can't wait for all this. And like you talking about teams losing, like Miami has been a first round bye the entire projection. If they were to lose to Clemson, who's at 16, who I assume a lot of people think that Clemson's just going to be out, and then Clemson all of a sudden becomes a team either in the playoff or with a first round bye. And then is Miami out because they're at 8 and they lose the ACC championship?
Yeah, because there's 2 ACC people going to get in? Probably not.
Probably not, especially with 2 losses, like over one of the SEC teams with 2 losses. Like it is crazy to talk about, but it definitely is going to change completely by the last one.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, by and large, like them doing this is bullshit because it doesn't mean anything, but it is fun for us to talk about. But I think the one thing that it does kind of lean to is we know that some like the Big 12 and the ACC, like chances are they're getting 1 team in. So, like, everyone else is going to be jockeying for those 8 spots between the SEC and the Big Ten. But we've talked about it a bunch. Like, there is a chance that, going into the final week of the season or the SEC championship, that there are like 7 teams in the SEC that are jockeying for a position in this. So like that is why it's still, it's fun to talk about this, but for it being this late in the season, like we still really have, there's what, maybe 2 teams that you can definitively say like, hey, they're probably in, and everyone else is kind of up in the air.
I appreciate the fact that the conference championships matter. Okay, that they wanted to put an emphasis on being a conference champion. That's why you get the first round bye, yada, yada, yada. But, like, until that game happens, we have no idea.
No.
Mm-hmm. And with how the college football season has been, literally anything can happen. Now, on that note, let's go to Hammer, Dahn. AP Tone obviously wrote a book on college ball before the season started. He's been following closely. He's helped me out every single week with game day prep. Tone, what is the big takeaway from last night, and what are your thoughts on what we've discussed thus far?
I think they football judgmented the shit out of this because, as Darius said earlier, that kind of gives them an out, and it's hard to argue with football judgment. Like when you look at it, they have Notre Dame over Miami, Boise, SMU, BYU. All those teams are one-loss teams. But you could definitely say, and I think it would be hard for people to argue that Notre Dame's loss to NIU is not the worst of those teams that have one loss. But their argument is Notre Dame, eye test, football judgment. So I think they football judgment and the shit out of that. So because it gives them an out. And then my whole thing is like SMU 13, BYU 14. Just put BYU at 13 and then SMU at 14 because they played each other and BYU won the game, and then people wouldn't be able to bitch about that. So in that situation, I was like, why put SMU at 13 and BYU at 14? But on the other side, Ole Miss is one above Georgia because Ole Miss beat Georgia. So are they going head to head in that situation, but not SMU, BYU? So there's no winning with this committee, as we've talked about. But in like those two situations, like they went both ways. So that in a couple weeks, if it's a head to head versus an eye test or a football judgment or whatever, they can say, hey, in the past we've ranked them this way. There's no. I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason to it, but there's a lot of
Tony.
They give themselves a lot of outs, which I think is smart.
I love the fact we talked to Coach Dan Mullen yesterday, who was awesome on the show.
Great.
The man.
We need to get him on the show more. He
Absolutely.
was even, he gave different answers for basically the same question a couple different times. So I appreciate that's good TV. That's good TV. Stanford Steve, to your point though, Tone sent me this text message because we're going to try to have him on the show, but he's got like 14 jobs.
Sure.
So we couldn't have him on.
Thanks,
Classic Steve.
Try to have Herbie on. He's in the middle of NFL calls. Try to have Greg McElroy on. He's traveling back.
It's busy, Greg, man.
Everybody's working, but we're getting texts now.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Herbie sent me a text. Herbie goes, I wish I was here right now for this conversation. Great convo. And I go, want a quick FaceTime? He goes, Browns call starting right now. All right, so he's out.
Well,
Stanford
they don't matter.
Steve. Stanford.
Yeah, you
Big
tell.
Thursday night matchup, AFC North.
I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it.
Huge Steelers-Browns on Thursday night. We will talk about that here in a matter of moments. But Stanford Steve sent me a text. He goes, they have to be using strength of schedule to rank the 2-loss SEC teams because Bama has the best, then Georgia, then Ole Miss, then Tennessee. Bad year to play Kentucky and Mississippi State in the SEC because you play them close. Not great. The question that should be asked is what happens if Indiana wins? Is Ohio State out? Okay, made a big deal of Jordan Travis' injury last year. Will they take into account the fact that the Buckeyes lost their left tackle and now they've lost their starting center because he tore his Achilles in the middle of practice? Now, quarterback position is vastly different, but this Ohio State team could look different without this guy as their center. I'm just talking about a committee of 13 people that have to make a decision on who deserves these spots and who doesn't. Georgia fans aren't happy.
No.
Georgia fans are pissed. Georgia fans move up. They're back in the college football playoff after a win over Tennessee, big win over Tennessee. And Georgia fans are like, this is a joke. What are we even talking about? Have you seen our strength of schedule? They're number one. They are the hardest schedule in all of football. And that's because the SEC, who does the scheduling, wanted Georgia in a lot of primetime games, right? They're the wagon. Georgia's the wagon. Saban's gone. We don't know what Alabama's going to be. Alabama's still always going to be good, but Georgia is the team. Preseason number one, they're going, here it is. And they're out of the playoff last week. They sneak in this week, and Georgia fans are like, what's the problem? What is the problem in this entire thing? And you look at the projected road right now for Ohio State, BYU, and then Boise State, and then they're in the semifinals of the national championship. And if you're an Ohio State fan, you're like, all right, how do we just stay?
Take that.
How do we stay?
Beat Indiana.
Right where we are right now. beat Indiana, but then
and
they
then
make
lose in the Big Ten championship.
Exactly. That's like
that's the interesting part. Is like they talk about
no disrespect to BYU or Boise State. We're just telling you how Ohioans are thinking.
For sure.
But if they lose to Indiana, they go from having this road to potentially not even having a road in the entire. It's wild.
Because it's like Georgia fans are pissed, but like I think other fans are probably pissed too. It's like think of Miami. It's like we lose one game potentially at this point. We win the ACC championship, and how are we rewarded? Well, you get a home game, but you're gonna play Georgia. So it's like it's one of those
or
things.
Penn State.
Yeah, or Penn State.
Or Penn State.
Or Penn State.
Or Penn State.
But either way,
I'm trying to figure out how we can get to number 5. I don't think there's a path.
5 is the spot.
5 is the spot.
5 is where you want to be.
Without a doubt.
Like, obviously, the first round bye, if you're banged up, which I assume everybody is good winning the championship. But 5 is where you get a home playoff game. So the amount of money that you make off of that, gigantic. Get to put on a show for the world.
Yep.
Look at what our team has. And then you're going to have the 12 seed, which everybody is assuming is the lowest ranked conference champion.
Right.
Which at this point is BYU. Could be the Big 12 representative, but once again, final couple weeks here, anything
Colorado.
It could be Colorado, could be Arizona State, but they could end up being ranked higher than Boise. If Colorado goes on this run there with Shedeur, with Travis Hunter, with how their offensive line is turned around, with how their defense is turned around, whenever they eye test that team, it's like, wait a minute, this team has actually become pretty good. They have 2 Heisman finalists on this particular team. They might move up in the rankings, and then the Power 5 or Group of 5 champion is out of 12 again. So whatever the case, 5 seems to be
the sweet spot,
the money spot.
But however it shakes out, like I know this year, and obviously this is the first year with the 12 team, like any of these teams can be beat by anybody. Like I feel like in years past, you had the LSU team with Burrow, you had those back-to-back dominant Georgia teams, you had some Alabama, Saban, like those teams. Like this year, any week, like one of these teams can go down. So like that's just gonna make this playoff this year, I think, gonna be probably one of the best runs we see ever.
Yeah, could you imagine if somehow this turns out and it's just 4 SEC teams in the semifinal?
Well, that's how the SEC fans are thinking. The SEC fans are thinking, like, okay, so how about the first 2 teams from our conference that are left out? Greg Sankey will probably do this. Mm-hmm. Greg Sankey will probably go to a podium, and let's say it's Tennessee and Ole Miss somehow. Ole Miss is in right now, but let's say something happens, Ole Miss ends, or LSU, whatever. Greg Sankey would go, I would like to propose a game after this college football playoff. Tennessee versus 7 of the teams that made it in there. I would like to propose a game, Ole Miss versus 4 other conference people that made it into this best of college football 12-team playoff. Like, that's how the SEC feels. I think that's how they're going to feel forever. And I assume there's some Big Ten people that hate everything about that. They hate everything about that down there in the SEC.
We had that argument before the show. It's like there's so many SEC people that it's all SEC, and all the Big Ten people are like, just come up north in December. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, because
we're going to punch you in the mouth and see how that goes.
Kirby Smart, Coach Mullen, Saban, everybody from the SEC has gone like, all right, why don't you come on down and why don't you just come on down and play our
Come get some.
Just regular week 6, kind of blinders on. You're deep in the season, but the end of the season is, and you got to play Kentucky at night at Kentucky. Just Kentucky. Just not a team that's made it to our conference championship in a long, long time. You just got to play them. Oh, you squeaked by it. Okay, cool. Next week, you got Tennessee in Rocky Top. Okay, and Tennessee, by the way, isn't even.
Yeah.
Not even.
Mid-tier.
And then the next week, good news. Stay in the state of Tennessee. You got Vanderbilt coming.
Yeah. They stink.
They absolutely stink. There's like nowhere to breathe, I think, in the SEC is how people say it. But then people look at Texas' schedule and they're like, well, how?
Really?
How did Texas? How did Texas sneak through an SEC schedule and not really do it? It's a never-ending cycle, which is why college football is full chaos and fantastic.